Too many personal trainers and like physical therapists and whatnot are just so like, oh, honey, if you, they don't use the word honey, but they're like, oh, if it hurts, just stop. Just don't do it anymore. You'll be okay. You'll be fine. Nah. You don't want to go to the point of no pain, no gain, where you're actually going to injure yourself, but you don't want to show so little of that mentality that you're just doing a couple reps when you have like an 8 RIR. Hey guys, for today's episode of Cardio Chats, I'd like to discuss the idea of no pain and no gain. You guys have heard this saying all the time, I'm totally sure. Nowadays it seems to be more of a running joke than anything, but there's still some people out there that take this idea of no pain, no gain super seriously. And for those of you that don't know what it means, it basically just means that you have to be pushing yourself to like a level that is basically unhealthy in order to see progress. They're saying that you need to basically enact pain. It doesn't have to be in the literal sense, but maybe in the emotional, whatever it may be type of sense. You have to enact this sort of pain and just go above and beyond in order to see progress to the point of like almost hurting yourself, or at least on the verge of doing so. And if you're not going that hard in the gym, then you're not actually going to be like getting as much progress as you probably like. Well, this idea kind of came about in the early days of lifting. I'm not sure like the exact origins, but it may have been on like Pumping Iron or something with Arnold Schwarzenegger. But it was just this like old bro type of mentality where you have to go extremely hard or else, you're going to be left in the dust. And that's just, in my opinion, just so far from the truth. If you're just going hard enough to like reach failure and maybe then some, or at least getting within like 3 RIR, which means reps on in reserve of failure, then you're going to be doing just fine. As long as you're including all the good stuff that we know works, proper exercise selection, proper progressive overload, enough rest and recovery and sleep and all that, then you're going to be growing and achieving everything just fine. And there's so many different avenues that you can get to your goals. You don't just have to be like maxing out on deadlifts and like getting super crazy with your form, or super crazy with the weight, and having somebody else help you with forced reps and all this stuff in order to make progress. You just don't. I mean, you can do higher rep sets to make progress, but as long as you're pushing yourself within a healthy range, then you're going to be totally fine, and you're going to be making just as much progress, I promise you. So this idea of no pain, no gain is just such an overstated thing. Now, I'm totally okay with like people saying it as a joke, like, oh, bro, no pain, no gain. How do you think you got these guns? Stuff like that, like that's just fun and games. That's okay. But when people are serious about it, that's a whole nother manner, because now we're asking to get people in trouble. And especially when people online, like people who are like reputable sources or like influencers where they have a large audience, if they're saying no pain, no gain, then what do you think the newcomers to the gym are going to think? They're going to think that they have to overexert themselves to the point of pain or fail, like beginners don't know the difference between muscle strain and joint strain or ligament strain. They don't know the difference of actually hurting themselves to how it's supposed to feel, because it's supposed to be like not painful, but maybe uncomfortable a little bit, at least when you first start. And eventually that goes away and you learn to love it, or maybe you loved it from the get-go like I did. But, there's certain ways to do it where it's a healthy way. You know what I mean? So I just think that we got to be educating the newcomers to the gym in the proper way. You can use no pain, no gain as a joke, but when you're saying that, when you're preaching that people have to be hitting these certain metrics, then that's just so far from the truth. And it's really unfortunate to see. And it's also unfortunate when people who shouldn't have a platform do have a platform. And I'm not like the platform police, I'm not somebody where I have that much authority or know-how. In fact, like, I'm well educated, but it's not like I have a PhD in the subject. There's people out there that are way more knowledgeable than me, but there are also people who claim to be more knowledgeable, but are just not. So just be careful with who you're listening to. And it can be a slippery slope for newcomers. And that's what I'm really afraid of. The seasoned people, they know how to push themselves healthy. And that's just something that everybody has to learn. They have to learn how to push themselves within the confines of their individual strength in accordance to their lifting journey. I hope that made sense. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that you have to learn how to push yourself, but you have to learn to push yourself the right way. If you're pushing yourself to the point where like you're bleeding, which I've done before, in fact, back when there was that rack pull craze, yes, I fell for that. I was super young. I was like 17 or something, and just didn't really, still in high school, I didn't really know that much. So I was doing like the rack pulls. It like tore some of my calluses off and I started bleeding. So that's an example where I actually fell victim to all this stuff, and I didn't know how to push myself healthily, or what to do that was proper. Like, for instance, rack pulls are just a stupid exercise. The only way that I think that a rack pull may be helpful is if you're really weak in that lockout position with a deadlift and you want to get stronger in that position, so you can specify by training that certain position. But I was doing like above the knee rack pull where that's not actually really helping that lockout, because at that point you already got it. You're already good. And since I was strapping up, it's not like I was working on my grip either. The only amount of training that I was getting was an isometric contraction on my upper trapezius musculature in order to hold the bar. But since you're doing it for reps, you're not actually getting a long enough of an isometric contraction in order to produce any sort of training stimuli upon the musculature for any conclusive outcome at all. So it's really just a waste of time, and the real workout is just loading and unloading the plates. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. That's just an example of where I've fallen for stupid like stuff in the fitness industry, and there's so many scams and whatnot in the fitness industry. And even like with me, some of the stuff that I'll post, and I'll admit if I'm wrong about something. I'm sure that I've said stuff that I just haven't like really looked into enough in terms of, I think that it's like I misspeak or something. Like I've used like the term flexion when I meant extension. I've done stuff like that. So that's just a literal error, but there's a whole different ballgame when people are preaching stuff out of their ass. So I just wish that I could be like a little shepherd for all these new trainees, to just kind of direct them on the right path. But once people kind of absorb the material of a certain person online, then they take that as like truth. So I've gotten so many comments recently where people are just blatantly disagreeing with me on like TikTok and whatnot. And that's totally fine. Like you have your voice. You can definitely disagree with me, but I would like some reasoning why, and therefore when I ask you why, you should have a good rebuttal. Otherwise, I think that maybe you should hear out the other side. Because like with me, like if I hear something, like I'm totally open to changing my opinion on it, if that opinion of theirs or whatever they're saying is backed up by fact and studies or actionable experience, whatever it may be, as long as it's backed up with some shred of truth, then I'm totally able to admit when I'm wrong. So, this just all kind of ties into a big giant bow of we need to stop this misinformation. These like old things that just won't die. No pain, no gain. Luckily, it's turning into more of a meme than anything. And I don't think that many people take it seriously, but it's just an example of, there being false knowledge and false information out there that people all the time fall victim to, unfortunately. So what's another one? Let's rattle off a few. the stupid exercise list is endless, and the rack pull, above the knee rack pull, is king, in my opinion. Oh, I was following this one dude in my early days where he was doing he would do rows, like single arm rows, but it wasn't a row because he was only doing scapular retraction. So it was just like this, and that's just not making the exercise. That's just like only training one function of the lats and the mid traps. And that's just scapulae retraction instead of actually getting that full, humeral adduction and humeral extension. So, that's why I really love to talk about how you should be looking at the functions and the anatomy of the muscle that you're trying to target. And if an exercise is not in accordance to how it is laid out in the biomechanics and the functions and everything of that exercise, you should scrap it. You don't want to be the gym, it takes so much out of us and takes so much time of our lives. Yes, it can be such a valuable and self-improving and learning experience. I mean, this can be like your safe haven if you really treat it that way. But if you're doing things wrong for a long time, then you find out that you could have been doing it a better way. Wouldn't that kind of suck? That's happened to me many times in my lifting journey where, especially with the rack pulls, especially with this, the scapular retraction exercise, all that kind of dumb exercise stuff that I fell victim for before I was formally educated in the topic. It just seemed like I wasted a bunch of my time and that I got scammed. And it sucks, because the last thing I want is for people who are more gullible and easily influenced to go to step foot into the gym and then think that they have to tear a callus in order to grow. But on the flip side of that, I wouldn't want people to think that they can get away with doing nothing. I worked as a physical therapy aide for about a year. One of the best jobs I ever had. I loved it because I was basically just a personal trainer, and I would just help people through their exercises. But these are people who their goals are just to rehabilitate their injuries. It's not actually to improve their body composition and stuff. So a lot of them wouldn't want to push themselves. So at all, they'd be doing tricep push downs or something. And they would stop after the fifth rep when on the sheet, they're supposed to actually complete 3 sets of 15. And they're oh, it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. But their injury isn't even an elbow injury. It's a neck and whatever it was. And that's just an example of people thinking that I also hear it all the time when I'm at the gym and I hear a local personal trainer talking to people and they're oh, we're gonna do it this way. And then they, sorry, I had to adjust the level. It went down once I stopped. And then the client or whatever is all oh, this doesn't feel right. I don't want to do it this way. Or those people just need to learn how to push themselves properly, and they have to learn what true muscular failure means. And they have to learn the importance of going towards that. And sometimes I think that a little bit of truthful, tough love is actually the way to go over just being easy on people. Too many personal trainers and physical therapists and whatnot are just so oh, honey, if you they don't use the word honey, but they're oh, if it hurts, just stop, just don't do it anymore, you'll be okay, you'll be fine. Nah. You don't want to go to the point of no pain, no gain where you're actually going to injure yourself, but you don't want to show so little of that mentality that you're just doing a couple reps when you have an 8 RIR, reps in reserve. You want to at least go right shy of failure, if not all the way to that point or past that point with intensity techniques or forced reps, depending on the exercise, of course. Because then you're just shortchanging yourself in the long run, and that can be a crappy feeling too. because the people that are less inclined to push themselves, in my experience, are less inclined to actually show up in the first place. And therefore, I think that they should be doing things right off the bat. And if they refuse to do things right, then maybe the gym just isn't for them, or at least the goals that they may have isn't for them. If they just want to go and like go through the motions and just feel like they got a good workout, join a CrossFit gym or something. I'm sorry if any of you guys are CrossFitters. In my personal opinion, and maybe there'll be data later on that like disagree with my opinion, and then I'll admit that I'm wrong. But in my opinion, at this moment of this cardio chat episode, I think that CrossFit is doing so much but getting so little. Like if you just want to do like some like conditioning exercises, why are you doing like all these swinging body weight, you know, what is it called when you, it's like a pull up and then you push at the top. I know the name of the exercise. It's not coming to me right now. But it's like they're just using so much momentum and whatnot that it's almost like gymnastics, but the whole goal is to like build muscular endurance and get toned. And there's just better ways to go about it. Like in my opinion, eat in your caloric deficit, do more conclusive exercises. Like for instance, if you're going to do like a burpee, then maybe just do push-ups and then jumping jacks separately so that you're training each facet of what the exercise is trying to be without combining the two for a lackluster performance. That's just my thought on that training form in of itself. Now, maybe I'm wrong about the whole CrossFit thing. I haven't actually done it. I've just seen what it's about. So maybe like it has a different all-intensive purpose. I'm not sure. Anyways, guys, I think that's going to do it for today's episode of Cardio Chats. I hope that some of this resonated with you. And if this chat didn't resonate with you, then please let me know where you disagree. And maybe we can have a healthy discussion in the comments. Hopefully you're not just going to say that you disagree and not back up your claims with anything. But anyway, have a good one, guys. Bye.